Hey guys, Those Communications. Welcome to my review of Who's Harry Crumb. Who's Harry Crumb? Harry Crumb is a hilarious comedy. That's what it is. A very underrated 80s comedy that barely nobody talks about nowadays, and I really think that's a crying shame. Even people, when they mention John Candy, they don't really seem to talk about Who's Harry Crumb that much. And yes, I understand it's not the best he has to offer. In terms of, and saw what like the best John Candy movie. I mean, Great Outdoors, you could say is better. You could say Uncle Buck is better. But for me personally, it's my favorite because it's the first movie that introduced me to John Candy. And I was introduced to this movie at a very young age. I caught it on cable, and I fell in love with the movie. And I've really, I've loved it ever since. And it's one of those movies that's kind of hard for me. I just have a really good soft spot for this because this movie introduced him to me one of the sweetest, funniest men alive in John Candy. His unbridled enthusiasm in this movie was infectious, and it was just a blast. And I watched this again recently when I was doing my family emergency, just like, it was a little stress and all this stuff. It was a really stressful time for me. And I just wanted to sit back and relax and laugh and have a good time. So I watched The Liar Liar, one of my favorite comedies, and then I popped in Who's Harry Crumb because I've been wanting to see it again, and I hadn't seen it in years. And instead of thinking that I would in the back of my head, I might be, I was thinking maybe it might not hold up. But no, it holds up really well. It really does hold up really well. Because it's just... It's John Candy. John Candy is one of the main reasons why all the flaws this movie has, I can let them slide. Because John Candy is great in this. He's on his A game. He's hilarious. He's, like I said, he has this unbridled enthusiasm that's just infectious. And he was one of the producers. He was an executive producer of this movie. And you could tell that he had a huge passion for this film, and he really wanted to bring whatever he had, everything that he had to this movie. And I think he really did bring his A game. Now, the director, Paul Flaherty, is the same guy who is responsible for directing that piece of shit Clifford with Martin Short. And I'm sorry, this does not deserve as much, this does not deserve more crap than Clifford. I've heard more people talk about Clifford or whatever, or I think Clifford has a lower rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It better have a lower rating. That movie was annoying. That movie was obnoxious. That movie was pathetic. Who's Harry Crumb is not a 30% movie. 9%. Good. Thank God. But anyway, I'm just I'm just baffled by it. It just doesn't seem like anybody talks about Who's Harry Crumb. Is it like, and probably it's because people think that it's just like another whatever Naked Gun or another Pink Panther or another this or that, or another Fletch. But for me, I never watched Fletch when I was growing up. I never saw the Pink Panther. I still haven't seen the Pink Panther. I'm still not familiar with the comedic stylings of Peter Sellers. Maybe I should be. Maybe I should, but I'm not. I can't say I am because I'm not. I've seen Dr. Strangelove once and I liked it, but I haven't seen it in years. So I'm not going to say that I'm familiar with the comedic stylings of Peter Sellers and the genius of Peter Sellers. I'm not that familiar with it. And with The Naked Gun, I didn't watch that until years later after I saw Who's Harry Crumb. And same thing for Fletch. So for me, when I saw Who's Harry Crumb, I didn't know about those other movies. So maybe for people who have seen those movies and know, I can understand their criticisms. I totally do. I understand people's criticisms of Who's Harry Crumb if, they find it generic and been there, done that type comedy with the bumbling inspector, bumbling detective who is pretty kind of, dumb. He's not really the smartest egg in the basket, so to speak. But, or smartest egg in the nest, which really doesn't make any sense. But I'm just saying, he's not the brightest bulb. But it didn't matter to me, because I just have a lot of fond memories associated with this movie. Like I said, it's the first John Candy movie I ever saw. It really introduced me to this wonderful, funny, personality that is just, I just think is timeless. John Candy is timeless. And I was laughing and cracking up, introduced me to Shawnee Smith, and I had a crush on her ever since. Yeah, me, kid, watching Who's Harry Crumb, crushing on Shawnee Smith, then see a few years later, go see the Blob remake, crushing on her even more. Yes, I have to admit, Shawnee Smith, was one of my crushes as a kid. I never had a chance, but, that's what I'm saying. Come on, Shawnee Smith, she was hot. She still was hot. And, but, yeah, introduced me to Shawnee Smith, and I thought she was great in this. She had really good chemistry with John Candy. It really looked like they had a blast. And great supporting cast. I mean, the movie's got Annie Potts looking drop-dead gorgeous. Something completely, for me, I almost didn't know it was the same actress until years later when I'm like, yeah, that is the same actress who played Janine Melnitz in Ghostbusters. So you go from that kind of nerdy character to this just drop-dead bombshell gorgeous woman, and the Southern Belle accent and everything. She was hot. She was hot to trot in this movie. And Tim Thomerson is one of the first times I saw him in a movie, and he plays this sort of dumb boyfriend of Annie Potts. You also have Jeffrey Jones on his A game here as Elliot Drayson, the head of this Crumb investigations sort of. See, Harry Crumb is the last surviving descendant of these really successful, great detectives, the Crumbs, but he's not nearly as intelligent, so to speak, as those Crumbs. So he's like over in some podunk town somewhere, I think in some backwater place in Florida or something, or in the South somewhere. And what happens is Elliot Drayson, Jeffrey Jones, he wants to hire somebody for this case, the Annie Potts case. What happens in the beginning of the movie, which is a PG-13 film, and it starts off pretty kind of... there's a little bit of nudity, okay? There's nudity. You see some side boob or some titty, you see it, and yes, it's only in the 80s you're going to see that in a PG-13 movie. And it starts off really not like something you see in a comedy, where this woman's in a spa, she's getting a mud, treatment, and she ends up getting chloroformed and just taken out. She basically kidnapped. So the movie opens up with this young girl, Jennifer Downing, who ends up getting pretty much she gets kidnapped. And she's played by Renee Coleman. And Renee Coleman is a gorgeous woman as well. There's a lot of hot chicks in this movie. Except for Valri Bromfeld as Detective Casey. That's not my thing. She's a bit too butch for my tastes. But anyway, so you have the whole... so what happens is she gets kidnapped, and so Elliot Drayson, he hires Harry Crumb. Elliot Drayson is the detective. He's the president of the detective agency, Crumb & Crumb, to investigate the case. Elliot is reluctant to supply PJ with one of his capable detectives, because in a twist, which, yes, I spoilers, there you go. I'm just going to get the twist out of the way first. A lot of movies do that anyway. You already know that pretty much he's the organizer. You don't really, you figure it out before Harry Crumb does anyway, so it's fine. You find out that Elliot Drayson, Jeffrey Jones, is actually himself the organizer of the kidnapping. So, but to give the appearance of taking the investigation seriously, Elliot offers PJ the services of Harry Crumb, played by John Candy, the last descendant of the agency's founders. Elliot talks up Harry's detecting skills and persuades PJ that he's the right man for the job. And, PJ Downing is a millionaire. He's played by Barry Corbin. And I thought he was good in this. He did a good job as this, rich dad, but at the same time he had a nice heart to him. But he married this gold digging bitch pretty much in Annie Potts, and she wants to murder him, and she wants the ransom money because they end up giving this whole ransom thing, and you end up having this I thought was really kind of funny sort of crazy setups where you have Elliot Drayson writing a ransom note, wanting the money, And then you have Annie Potts and her dumb boyfriend Tim Thomerson are like, no, Sunday's not gonna work. Monday, like they have the kidnapping, they have the letter, they like just edit it, because they want the money, they want the $10 million. And then, and there's a whole sort of, triangle, and you find out that Elliot Drayson has always wanted Annie Potts, his character Helen Downing. He's always wanted Helen. He's had the hots for her ever since he knew her in college. And so he's thinking, I got the money now. We're going to go have, a good time. And then, of course, twists and turns and everything. And hilarity ensues. But I thought it was well handled, I thought. And I've seen some critics say it was poorly written. I don't see that. I think it was actually really well handled with all the different twists and turns in the plot. And with the whole idea of, the guy who's already organizing the kidnapping, hiring some incompetent guy in order to, pretty much, he hired Harry Crumb because he just thought, this guy's not going to figure it out. And in the end of even in the end of the movie, he really honestly doesn't. It's really funny how it all ends up, because Harry Crumb comes to the conclusion that it's Annie Potts and Tim Thomerson, and they've been wanting to get the ransom, and they kidnapped Jennifer all along because they wanted the money. And but in reality, it was actually Elliot Drayson. But even at the end of the movie, Harry Crumb has no clue that it was it was Elliot Drayson who was behind the whole thing. And so Elliot Drayson just, he's had enough, and he's been tied up and hung up in a chair. Tied up with his mouth duct tape, tied up in a chair, and in some utility closet in an airport. And Harry Crumb's doing all this stuff, and he just like rips off the tape, and he's like, "All right, I did it! I was the one that kidnapped Jennifer Downing. I did it all! I did the ransom, and you stupid! Don't know how you figure it out, Crumb." But so I thought that was just Jeffrey Jones's reaction is just pure anger at the end is hilarious. So yeah, I'm jumping all over the place with this movie, but it's a pretty simple plot. It's you have an investigator, the guy hires a bumbling detective to get on the case, and Harry Crumb then shows up at the Downing residence and befriends PJ's other daughter, Shawnee Smith, and Nikki Downing. You have a lot of fun, nice, fun moments with those two, and some funny, really hilarious bits of slapstick in the movie. And, then it ultimately ends in a sort of like there's a car chase when, John Candy and Shawnee Smith are in a car with no brakes, trying to catch up with Annie Potts and Tim Thomerson. You have scenes where Harry Crumb is going in disguise. There's one where he goes into the hairdresser salon. The one where Jennifer was kidnapped. He dresses up as this like Brazilian guy, and he's like, "I'm the Jour de Rouge." And he's like, "Do you know how to spell that?" No, I do not. Try it with the D. Yeah, try spelling it with the D. And then I love the whole thing is going over to the hairdresser. The people, they're getting their hair done. It's like too poofy, too straight. Too straight. Too poofy. And then the whole sort of thing where he goes in and talks to the lady who is doing the mud bath, massage sort of thing in the spa, and they're playing tic-tac-toe on the mud while they're talking. He's investigating, questioning her, and they're playing tic-tac-toe on the mud on this woman's back. I thought that was hilarious, and that actually it's on her stomach because she's like this. She's on her back. She's laid out on her back, not on her stomach. So they're doing it on her stomach, and I just thought it was funny. And the mud technician, she ends up winning, and he's like, "Oh, you're very good, very good." And I love the whole thing where he has this beard. He has his chest hair, fake chest hair, and it falls off his chest onto the woman's, basically her genitals. And it's just a quick thing, but it's totally an adult joke that I didn't get as a kid. And it falls on her genitals. It looks like he's got a hairy bush. And then he looks up. John Candy even looks at the audience with this look on his face, like, "Oh, drop the chest hair. So he grabs the chest hair off her, her genitals, off her, hoo-ha, and then like puts it on his face. And then the mud massage lady, she's like, "You look different. Did you have a beard before?" And it's like, no. It's just your eyes. It's just your eyes playing tricks on me. I love that scene. It was funny. I just like John Candy. I think he's great. And then there's another scene where he ends up in the beginning of the movie. It starts out with him, and he's in disguise, like this sort of Don King sort of get up, and he's on this window washer, and he's like swinging back and forth trying to get a picture. Like, he's trying to do whatever he can to get a picture. And Lyle Zato has a fun cameo where he's like yelling at this woman, his poor wife, and he's all like, "You've been cheating on me, haven't you? I swear to God, this is something about the next guy who comes in here, he's gonna answer the phone or some shit like that. It's not gonna be for me, it's gonna be for him or some shit." And then like Harry Crumb, he swings too hard and he goes flying through the window, lands in the chair, and then they're like, "It's for you." And Harry Crumb was like, "Oh, hi." It's hard to explain, really. You have to see that scene but I really chuckle. That's Lyle Zato, the destroyer, and he's like destroying himself, and he's like freaking out. Like, "I swear to God, you've been cheating on me. The next person who comes in and answers this phone is not going to be for me. It's going to be for that." I think it was like the next guy. I was like, "I swear to God, there's going to be someone else next time I come on. Next time I turn around, there's going to be somebody else sitting in that chair, in my chair." And that's when John Candy falls right in his chair. And he's like, "Oh, hello, it's for you. Oh, hi." I thought that was pretty funny. And so then he goes on after that, and he's got these pictures, which he thinks are, proof of this client, Mrs. McIntyre, who, she's trying to prove that her husband has been cheating on her. And then I love this scene too, but it's really funny because he has this tree that's for some reason on the desk, and it's like dropping like diseased fruit like on top of this poor woman's head and everything while John Candy's talking to her. And she's all looking at the photos that he supposedly has of proof that her husband is cheating on her, and she's like, "You idiot! These are pictures of me!" And then Harry Crumb falls backwards in his chair, and he's like, "What? Let me see those. Give them here." "No, not so fast. I've had my eye on you for a while, lady. I knew you were up to something, and here's my proof. It was you who was having an affair with your husband all along." "What?" "I've uncovered some pretty low schemes in my time, but secretly hiring me to take pornographic pictures of you and your sleazeball husband is as low as it gets. I don't believe this. Believe what you want, lady, but don't believe it here. You are a poor excuse for a human being, says you." And then just the whole combination of the tree dropping diseased fruit and shit, and the whole idea is like, "There's you all along." Says you. There's John Candy just sold that scene great, like he always does. And he gets a call from Dryson. That's when he gets the call to investigate the Downing case. And there's a lot of hilarious moments. He goes in and he gets a car. He goes to a car dealership, and he's eyeing this really nice, like, cherry red. I think it's a convertible. And they're like, "No, it's not in your price range, blah, blah, blah." So he drives off in this junker, and then a moment of perfect comedic timing. He gets hit. Another car just smacks this piece of junk car that Crumb is driving. Like, as soon as he drives out of the parking lot of the car dealership. So then the next shot in a seamless transition is of Harry Crumb driving in the car that he wanted all along. And there's another scene where he ends up getting on a bus, transferring somewhere, and you actually have a cameo with James Belushi, and he's sitting next to John Candy, and he's like got a Coke, and he's putting the cup in it, and it's like, and he's got a cherry, and he's like, "I got a cherry, a Coke, cherry, Coke, and cherry Coke." And then the look on James Belushi's face cracks me up because he just looks like he's just pissed and annoyed at this guy just, making cherry coke in front of him. Oh, he's riding on the bus. And then you have so that's before he ends up getting on the go to the car dealership. And I like the soundtrack that the movie has. It has not been released. The soundtrack was not officially released in any format. And there's two songs that I thought were pretty cool. Of course, they used "I Got You" in some ways. "I Got You," "I Feel Good" by James Brown, which I think was a fun one. "Big Fun," Harry Crumb. That's pretty much the theme song, performed by the Temptations, which I thought was great. I really like that song. And Michael Coleman, who did I think he did the score. Yeah, Michael Coleman, who did the score for The Golden Child, did the score for Who's Harry Crumb, and I didn't mind the score either. And Michael Coleman, Richard Martin Ross, "On Your Side Tonight." I like that one. That's the one that was that was the one that was playing while he was in the sort of montage where Harry Crumb's on his way to, the rich side of town to he goes to Los Angeles from an assignment in the firm's Tulsa branch office. Tulsa. That's where it was, not somewhere in Florida. It's Tulsa. And he immediately begins his investigation in L.A., assisted by Jennifer's younger sister, Nikki, who's considerably smarter than he is, which I like the whole thing where he goes in and the whole scene when he first drives up, he goes in and he ends up getting hit by the sprinklers. And so you have this uncomfortable scene where it looks like he's jacking off in front of on the porch. So you have Shawnee Smith show up and she's like, "Can you get your free hand off the doorbell, please?" I was like, he's like, "Oh, no. This is not what it looks like. This is not." I can't do it justice by explaining it to you. You gotta see that scene, and John Candy just sells it. It totally does look like he's just jacking off, and on their front porch outside this mansion, and they're just like, "Could you take your free hand off the doorbell?" Because he's like keeps pushing the doorbell, so it's ringing constantly, and so I just thought that was pretty funny. And, yeah, do you mind taking your free hand off the doorbell? And, so anyway, then he goes and meets up with Nikki. And I like the scene that they have when he goes into her, the bedroom of Jennifer's bedroom. And sees, a giant poster of Jennifer, and she's like a model, and Shawnee Smith is all saying, "I wish I was as pretty as she is. She's like a model." And I'm like, "You're Shawnee Smith. Come on. You're just as hot, if not hotter. Come on now." And I like this line that she has with her. She's like, "Look at you. Look at her. Isn't she perfect?" And then Harry Crumb's like, "Well, I wouldn't say perfect. I mean, look at the size of her head. She must be enormous, but easy to find." And it's just, Candy's deadpan just sells that. And I just thought it was hilarious. It sounds like it's a dumb line, but Candy makes it work, as always. And what happens is, then he meets up with Barry Corbin. They have this fun scene where he's, throwing darts at a dartboard, and he ends up messing around with a fish tank, and a fish gets stuck on his finger, and he's trying to get it off, and he flings it off onto a picture perfectly at the same spot where the Barry Corbin in the picture is holding up a big fish. And then he ends up basically he goes down and put his hands on a table to make a point, and he ends up literally puncturing his hands because all these fish hooks get stuck in his hands, and he's like pulling them out and stuff like that. The scene ends with some nice sort of pratfall sort of humor where he throws the dart and he hits it right on target. "I will find the kidnappers. I will find your daughter." Knocks the dartboard off, and it breaks a more stuff in this poor guy's office. And then what happens is Crumb's tendency to mix fact with fantasy, however, does not prevent him from noticing that Nikki's stepmother, Helen Downey, is having an affair with her tennis coach, Vince Barnes, played by Tim Thomerson. I know this game. It's 40-love. And the score is 40-love. And then he goes in, and then after several incidents and observations, Crumb comes to the conclusion that she is behind the kidnapping. And Helen is also the object of affection, like I said, of Elliot Drayson, and all she's interested in is his money. It is money. All she wants is money. And to this end, she tries to get rid of her husband on several occasions, even does her best along with Barnes to get the ransom for herself. And that's when you have a scene where Shawnee Smith and Harry Crumb are in a car with no brakes, because it's supposed to be set up for Barry Corbin. And there's some other sort of fun scenes. Harry Crumb meets up with Elliot Drayson. I like when Elliot Drayson gave him his own office before he sets him off on this mission to L.A. And I like the whole... He gets his tie stuck in the paper shredder. And I just love how this, the whole scene is John Candy has his Crumb has his own office finally. He's looking around like some, child who's never been somewhere, like he's never been in this place before. So he's looking at cool, like, random ass things, and it's like, cool, using the pencil sharpener way too many times. It's like he uses it once, and it's like so powerful it leaves nothing but a nub of a pencil. And he goes in and he gets his tie stuck in the paper shredder, and he's getting a phone call. Harry Crumb, phone call. It's like, and somehow ends up grabbing some scissors and cuts the tie. And as soon as the Downings come in to meet him, that's when he pops right back up, and he's got almost like a perfect bow tie. And then he ends up meeting up with Drayson later. And Drayson's talking about, he's really big into this, he has this collectible, priceless, fossilized dinosaur egg. And he's like, Harry Crumb's like, what's this, an egg? And Drayson's like, it's a pterodactyl egg. It's fossilized. It's 90 million years old. In the entire world, only 2 of these have ever been found. That may be worth something. And then you just have the whole sort of thing where... I love the stuff with him and Drayson. They meet up in the office later. After he had this undercover moment, which was pretty funny. Kind of racist, but hilarious, with him as this Sabu from the Bombay Air Conditioning. I'm Sabu from Bombay Air Conditioning. It was like, hey, get out of here. Hey, beat it, Sabu. I was like, maybe later. But I'm here to fix the air conditioning. Beat it, Sabu. Maybe later. That's classic. And then that's a line that not very people seem to really... That's not even on the memorable quotes. I had to find that line off of... people were talking about the funniest scenes in the movie on IMDb, which there's about 3 pages of fun people who talk about funny scenes that I really like. And Joe Flaherty, another guy who was in SCTV with John Candy's in this scene, and he's the one that said, beat it, Sabu. And he convinces him that, you need to fix your air conditioning. And he goes in. I love how there's subtle Indian music playing throughout the background of that entire scene. And he goes up with Shawnee Smith trying to get some photographs of what they think is Vince Barnes. In reality, it's actually Elliot Drayson who showed up and wanted to get in on it with Andy Potts and get some action with Andy Potts. But of course, John Candy has no idea about that. And so he drops a quarter and it falls out of the vent. And Joe Flaherty's watching this game and he's like, come on. And then a coin falls out of the vent and he grabs it and he's like, oh wow, seems like a lucky day. Nice. And then it sort of culminates in a hilarious scene at the end when he gets the pictures and everything while he's in the air conditioning vent. But, they end up, it gets too hot, ends up being too hot in the room. So they turn on the air conditioning and he's frozen. And then John Candy gets slung, gets blown backwards. And you just hear this thumping noise. And Joe Flaherty's waiting You know, he's like waiting for like more, you know, he's like, oh wow, more coins. It's like, and he's like, come on, jackpot! And then John Candy just barrels through the air conditioning bed and just lands face first, knocking Joe Flaherty's ass, knocking him on his ass. I thought it was hilarious. I'm just like, come on, more coins! Jackpot! Gong! Knock the fuck out. Then they head out and they got the pictures. And I love when he goes back to Elliot Drayson's office to tell him about, you know, what's going on. And I just find this hilarious. Because he's, you know, Elliot Drayson, you know, this is a quote. Harry's showing Elliot the photographic evidence of Helen Downing having an affair. However, Harry is not aware that the man in the photos is Elliot himself, not the apartment's owner, Vince Barnes, who is also a lover of Helen's. The photos clearly show Elliot's face, and Elliot is amused by Harry's ignorance. You know, he's just like, you haven't looked at these, have you? No, I was there. You think an athletic guy like Vince Barnes would have a big dingus? But no, look at that pathetic little fallacy. Woohoo! You don't know anything about this case, do you? I like that whole. I just love how John Candy delivers that line. It's like, what about this? You know, Vince Barnes would have a big dingus, but no, look at that pathetic little fallacy. Because the whole joke is that he has his word for the day calendar. He just looks at it and the word is fallacy because he used it earlier in a funny scene where he's talking to the client that he thought, you know, was having an affair with her husband all along. And it's like, oh, and you're philodendron. You're philodendron, you know, because it was a philanderer, but he like messed up and said philodendron instead. And he says, like, you know, look at that pathetic little fallacy. Woohoo! Then just Elliot Drayson, he's pissed. It's like, what the you know anything about this case, do you? It was great. And this leads to more sort of funny pratfalls as usual. I like the whole scene where there's a scene at the dinner table with John Candy. He's there with the police detective, and they're having dinner with the Downings, and it turns into like a hilariously awkward footsie scene where like one person is, you know, trying to. It's like I think it's like Annie Potts or someone's pleasuring somebody else or what happens, and Candy ends up literally, he thinks somebody's pleasuring him like with his foot, Annie Potts, so he starts going after somebody else. And so he actually ends up like pleasuring, you know, I think he ends up like going after, like using his foot to, I think it's somebody else like uses their foot to like pleasure Elliot Drayson. And he's like, you know, at their dinner table, and they're all getting foot jobs pretty much at the dinner table. It's such an awkward but hilarious scene. And then I love the whole sort of moment where John Candy's on this stationary bike in Drayson's office, and it's like, you know, I wonder what this lever for. I mean, it couldn't be brakes, right? You know, these things don't have brakes. He accidentally messes up and pulls the lever. A bike goes flying. Just shatters his priceless dinosaur fossils, and, you know, breaks his egg. And I love this earlier in the film. Like, there's just this hilarious scene where John Candy just imagine just this idea. Just think of this in your head, and it's just hilarious. John Candy doing a backflip. So he just like molded like a bunch of freaking, you know, does a bunch of backflips and lands on his feet. Because I'm a master of Aikido, you know. And yeah, that's fun. And then basically what happens, like I said, you know, finds the whole sort of thing. There's a ransom, $10 million ransom. It sort of leads into, he thinks that Helen, you know, he thinks that Helen's the one behind it all. He does a little recon at this restaurant. This scene always cracks me up. He ends up falling, he ends up, you know, he's on top of this window looking in, and the window is one of those, like, I guess one of those revolving windows. So he gets revolved out. You know, and he lands onto this ceiling fan, and he's holding on for dear life. And you see this snot kid come by, and he grabs like the wheel that operates the the ceiling fan to make it go fast or slow, and he's like looking down at the kid. He's like, "Ow!" No, and the kid's like, and then he just like starts spinning the fan at like full speed, and John Candy's holding on for dear life and gets flung off. And then he's like walking by, stumbling over, through the rest of the patrons outside. I can say, I talk about this scene all I want to, but it's John Candy that really makes that work. And ultimately, they, you had the scene, of course, I said, they end up in the little car chase, and the car with no brakes. And at the end, they find out that they just assume, because of, like, they watched a movie, that, the kidnapper's going to go somewhere. They're going to go, like, to I think it's, like, there's, like, Casablanca. The Butch Casablanca, so they think they're going to go to Rio or something. I think it was, like, Rio or something like that. And so they just make an assumption that that's where they're going to go, and they look up tickets, and they find that somebody's going over there. And that's when we have the whole sort of mix-up between Tim Thomerson, Annie Potts, and Deli Drayson and all of that. And before that, even, John Candy ends up doing some scene where they go to a horse track. He ends up getting stuck in the jockey's telephone booth, which is really tiny because it's a nice, funny little joke. And I like the whole scene where Elliot Drayson is talking to him on the phone. And he's using, like, this German accent, and he's all like, "Give the money to Elliot Drayson. Money to Elliot Drayson." And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't understand you. Mr. Kidnapper, could you please speak up? I can't. Drayson! I'm sorry, Drayson! He was like, Drayson! Then he just speaks in a normal voice later because it doesn't work. And it's like, "Give the money to Elliot Drayson." And so then he ends up having a little bit of help to get pulled out of the phone booth. Him and Shawnee Smith end up going to the airport. End up having the whole thing where Annie Potts double crosses Jeffrey Jones. She takes the money with Tim Thomerson. They think they're going to get away in the plane. They, basically tie up Elliot Drayson, tie up Jeffrey Jones, lock him in a utility closet. You have the whole sort of course, earlier before that, and more. There's tons of funny scenes in this movie. Like, I probably missed some. There's one where they're counting the ransom money, and I love how, they're like, and he's John Cage is just counting all the ransom money, and he's like flipping the money, and then he like flips the last one, and he's like, "One short." And he's like, "How do you know that?" And he's just like, and then he's like, then you find out, and then count it. And then the next scene is it's just such an awkward, hilarious scene. The police detective lady, it counts them all. It's like, "What do you know? One short is right." Exactly. And then you find out that the butler guy, Tim, had stolen a $100 bill. He's like, "Hey, man." And so then you have the whole sort of thing. And then the airport thing happens. Then you have a fun scene where John Candy gets on a stair car, that's used like what you kind of saw at the end of Liar Liar. And you have the song "I Need a Hero" by Bonnie Tyler in the background, which is fun. "I need a hero." Then he breaks down. He chases after the plane, and he breaks down the door of the plane. And it's like, wow, that was well shot. And I was like, "Who are you?" And the name's Crumb, Harry Crumb. And then he comes in and he knocks out Tim Thomerson. Tim Thomerson's got a gun, and he ends up, "I'm master of Aikido." And then he ends up doing a kick, and he slings off his boot and smacks Tim Thomerson in the face and in the hands, knocks the gun out, and knocks him out. And I got the boots to match. I got a black cub, I have a black belt in Aikido, and the boots to match. And then pretty much the case is solved. They find Jennifer Downing. She was held somewhere near the airport on the tarmac somewhere in this complex. And and I thought those scenes were pretty kind of freaky, actually. You had the guy who was holding her pretty much as some psychopath guy who wanted to electrocute her with a cow prod. And what happens is, in the process, I think what happens is like Harry Crumb, when he gets hit by the tail wing of the plane or whatever, plane gets out of control and knocks something and smashes into the the place where the guy's trying to electrocute her. He gets knocked out. I think he electrocutes himself. And eventually they find that Jennifer and everything's good. And that's the scene where they, he thinks he figured it out. And Dryson admits that he was the one behind it all along. And then the end of the movie is pretty much a cliffhanger for a sequel, which never happened, sadly, where Crumb's now the president of Crumb and Crumb. And he's going to go on this next case, and he's dressed in drag. It's like, this is going to be interesting or something like that. I forgot exactly what the line was. And then I like how the movie ends with it was like glass breaking pretty much. And then you have this fun song by the Temptations called Big Fun, which is appropriate for the movie because I thought Harry Crumb is just a movie that's a big fun. And I know it's like a 40-minute long review, and I almost didn't mean it to go that long. But like I said, this is a movie that I really enjoy. I really enjoy Who's Harry Crumb. And, however long it took to talk about it is however long it took to talk about it. And I also forgot one of my favorite scenes is just great bits of slapstick by Physical Humor by John Candy. He's got this glove stuck on his hand, and he can't get it off. He's like, they should make these in, extra large or something. One size fits all. Well, he just started to pull off this glove, and he asks Barry Corbin for help, and he pulls it off, and he sends the glove flying. And it's just, as dumb as it is, it just makes me crack up. There's just a lot of moments in this. It's like, it might not be the funniest movie ever, but there's just a lot of moments in it that just make me crack up, that make me laugh, and I just have a lot of fun with it. I think the supporting cast is great. Direction is pretty solid, considering it's from the guy who directed Clifford. And it's just John Candy, he makes it. He totally makes the movie. Because, it's John Candy. He's great in everything pretty much. It's pretty much when he's healthy. Wagons East was a piece of crap, but even in Canadian Bacon, which I don't like, he still had energy in it. He's just one of the most energetic, hilarious men that ever lived, and he really does, his presence alone makes this movie awesome to me. And like I said, it was the first movie that introduced me to Harry Crumb. Harry Crumb introduced me to John Candy. So, and it introduced me to Harry Crumb. Who's Harry Crumb is a movie that, more people should know who Harry Crumb is. That's pretty much what this is getting down to. But I can understand why people don't like it, or they don't find it the greatest thing ever. But I really enjoy the movie. I highly enjoy the film. I find it really funny and enjoyable and a blast and really entertaining. And, I really don't know what to say. Who's Harry Crumb was rated out of 5 stars. I'm going to give it 4. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. I don't give it 5 because, like I said, there are some moments that aren't the funniest. The mystery element is, okay. It's there, but it's not nearly as engaging as the type of mystery that was in Fletch. And, like I said, it's not the funniest thing ever. So, I know I'm gushing on the movie, but part of it is because there's just a lot of great memories associated with it. And, but I do feel that if you're a big John Candy fan and you haven't seen this, you should definitely check it out. I think it's one of his most underrated films that he starred in, right up there with Summer Rental. That's another incredibly underrated film that John Candy starred in that not many people talk about. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of Who's Harry Crumb, and I'll see you guys later. See ya.